现在订阅同盟会英语，不论找工作、升学或英检，表现更棒。快上
StudioClassroom.com。
现在请收听教学节目。
Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Join us today as we talk about money. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to another Advanced Studio Classroom. My name is Simon, and you are joining me in the studio today for our May Finance article. So we're going to be talking about money. We're actually going to be talking about money for the next 3 days, but for only 2 of those days, we will be doing an article called Financial Success is a Lot More Than How Big Your Pile of Money is. Joining me in the studio, we have Monya.
Hi.
Monya, I was going to ask you how big your pile of money is, but that's a very personal question.
That is
right?
a very personal question.
Yeah, North Americans don't like to answer that question, so I better not ask it. But Monya, maybe you can tell us what they mean here by a pile of money.
What they mean is it's not about how much money you have, it's how you handle that money.
Okay, so when you have a pile of something, though, it just means you I guess you can imagine a scene in a movie, listeners, where you take all your money and you put it on the bed, and it's like a mountain of money piled up on the bed, right?
Right.
So they're saying it doesn't actually matter how much money you have in that pile. What matters, like you said, Monya, is how you use it.
Yes.
Excellent. Zach, you're also in the studio with us today.
Hello, listeners. Good to be back.
Zach, I think we have done financial articles together before.
That sounds right.
Yeah, but it's certainly a topic that has become more and more of interest to both you and I in recent years as we became fathers around the same time.
I was just going to say, I think it's a timing thing.
Yeah, life changes change people's attitudes about money. And we're actually going to see that in this article today. The person who is writing the article goes through some life changes, not related to fatherhood, but related to changes in life. And that has a big effect on how he thinks about and sees money. So essentially, listeners, this article today is a series of tips. We're going to end up going through 2 of these tips. And basically, it's advice on how you should think about or deal with money. It's a little more theoretical, I suppose we could say, than some of the financial articles we do here on Advanced. Often they're things like encouraging you to save money or ways to invest money. This is more ways to think about what you're doing with your money, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, why don't we jump into our first reading together? If you have your Advanced magazine, you'll find the reading on page 22, and we're just going to read through the first section together now.
Financial advice for all ages. How to approach money from all stages of life. Financial success is a lot more than how big your pile of money is. There's so much advice on managing your money that it can be difficult to know where you really stand financially. I got reacquainted with finances when I left my corporate job for the life of an entrepreneur. Living off of variable income versus a steady, guaranteed monthly paycheck will do that to you. So I've learned a lot in the past several years about what really constitutes financial success. Here are 6 signs that you're doing better financially than you think you are.
Monya, where do you get your advice on how to manage money?
Can I say you? No.
Me?
Well,
really?
I'm not really well versed in this subject matter, but I'm very interested in learning more about finances. And I've heard you say a lot of really interesting things about finance.
Oh, it's true. Listeners, Manya and I do sit very near each other in the office here at Studio Classroom, and so I have no doubt she has been listening in on all of my money planning sessions.
That's right.
Finding out all of my tricks as
Yes.
I have built my pile of money higher and higher.
I take out a yellow pad of paper and take notes.
I was surprised when you said that because I don't usually think of myself as being that financially successful, so financially successful. So I am honored that you are listening to me. But
to also really answer your question, like in my life, my mom is someone I do talk to a lot about finances.
Thank goodness the pressure's off now. I was just going to say to the listeners, this is probably a case of what we say in English is the blind leading the blind. Which just means, someone who can't see is helping another person who can't see find their way. The idea being that people who don't know what they're doing, trying to help other people who don't know what they're doing.
That's true. Or there's also the subtitle or the deck in our article. We're approaching money from all stages of life, and so it's kind of a matter of perspective and kind of what stage you find yourself in and growing from there.
I'm glad, though, Manya, that you're getting your advice from your mom.
Yeah.
Well, your mom works in a bank, right?
That's right. And
Okay.
so I think that really helps a lot, especially with the language, because when you talk about finances, sometimes there are a lot of words you may not be completely familiar with until you start thinking about it.
And I suppose we have now made the point that they make in the first paragraph of our reading, right? This idea that there's so much advice on managing your money that it can be difficult to know where you really stand. Basically, the point being that you don't know who to ask, you don't know which advice is good, which advice is bad, and often you don't understand the terminology or the words, so you don't understand what the advice really is, right? Big problems. And so people need to acquaint themselves with financial knowledge, I guess, personal finance.
Terms, vocabulary, words, things like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when you acquaint yourself, it really just means you get to know. We actually refer to someone who isn't quite a friend, but you know them as an acquaintance, right? So you'd say friends and acquaintances. And so when you acquaint yourself with something, you get to know it. And our writer here says that he was reacquainted with finances when he went through a life change. Zach, what was the life change he went through?
Well, here he's talking about a change in work or profession. So he went from his corporate job that offered him a steady paycheck to being an entrepreneur that is starting one's own business. So maybe less of a consistent income then.
So I feel like most of our listeners will know that an entrepreneur is someone who's starting their own business. But this word corporate job is an interesting one. Again, most of our listeners will know that corporate means corporation. But would you say that any job working for a corporation is a corporate job? So, for example, in North America, where we grew up, Zach, there are lots of companies making cars, big car factories. If you have a job working in a factory for a big company, would you say you have a corporate job?
High up in the company?
Oh, there you go. That's the key right there. So usually when we use this term corporate job, we're talking about like a management, white-collar professional job for a big corporation. We're not talking about any job working for a corporation.
Right.
Okay. So basically, this person's gone from having a very stable, professional, white-collar job to starting his own business. And what would you expect that would mean for his finances, Manya?
I think he would see a dramatic change in his finances because being an entrepreneur means that he's not having this he's not going to have this steady income anymore. And he might just see like a greater variation in his income.
Normally, would you think of it as being a move that will make you instantly wealthy, like the Google guys?
No.
Usually we think moving to entrepreneurship makes you kind of poorer, right?
Yeah, when you're starting out, you won't see the results right away.
Now, you mentioned a word. You said his income would vary, right? I think you said it would vary, and that actually is what they say next, living off a variable income, meaning it goes up and down. Some months you make a lot of money, other months you don't make so much money. And then they compare that. They use this word versus, V-E-R-S-U-S. Now, that is an interesting word because often we write the short form of versus as V-S. And I have heard many, many people tell me that means with.
What?
V-S. Yeah, there seems to be kind of like a Chinglish misconception about V-S, meaning with. So if I say Zach versus or Zach V-S Simon, then people would say that means like Zach with Simon.
I
or
thought
Zach and
W
Simon.
is with.
Well, that is in shorthand, but now you're just confusing everyone.
No, I'm
this
confused.
VS, it really means against, competing with, compared to,
Yes.
not with, right?
Or V.
That's right. So just to make sure that that's clear for our listeners, this word versus, this might be the secret language tip of the lesson for those of you who are listening at home. It's a Latin word, versus, and we write the short form VS or VS with a period, and it means compared to or against. And so what he's saying here is there's a big difference between living off the variable, the changing income of an entrepreneur, and a person who has a guaranteed monthly paycheck like we all do in our corporate jobs here, right? We have stability. So there's a big difference here. And he actually adds on this interesting phrase, will do that to you. So the whole sentence is, living off a variable income will do that to you. Now, what is that here? What are they referring to?
The being reacquainted or refamiliarizing yourself kind of with finances.
Yeah, so he's not using extreme language here. It's very subtle, but it's like he's saying when he made this switch to having his own company, he started worrying about money and thinking about money again, right? So he doesn't mean, when he says being reacquainted, he doesn't mean like he suddenly felt the desire to go read a bunch of books about how to get rich.
Maybe in his thinking changed and just brought that concern back up to a priority.
Yeah, so instead it's more like, it's not like he quit his job and then he sat down with a book on how to beat Wall Street, and make a lot of money. Instead, he quit his job and then he started wondering if he should be buying the large coffee or the small coffee in the morning because he didn't know how much money he was going to make that month, right?
Well said, Simon. So you kind of get that from that phrase, something will do that to you.
Yeah, and as a result of all this thinking about money, he's learned a lot about, and this is, I think, the key of the article, what really constitutes financial success. Now, when something constitutes something, what is it doing?
Adds up, equals to?
Makes it up, right? So what really counts, or what you should really consider as financial success, the way he's thinking about that has changed. And so he goes on to say he's going to give us 6 signs, 6 tips, I suppose, or ways of thinking about things that might tell you you're doing better financially than you think you are. So we're only going to get 2 of those today, but I think we should jump into the first one now. So listeners, again, if you have your magazine with you, you can go and have a look at the first tip as we read that together.
1. You have clear and commensurate financial goals. You won't know where you're going financially and how well you're doing without clear financial goals. A survey by Charles Schwab found that only 1 in 4 people have sound financial goals and a plan to back it up. I admit that when I was in corporate, I didn't have a plan. My wife and I would basically spend what we made without worrying about it because we knew next month would bring another paycheck. No longer. We have a crystal clear financial goal now tied to exactly how much our entrepreneurial ventures need to make relative to the lifestyle we want to live, which brings us to the commensurate point. My wife and I set a financial goal assuming we'd be trading down our lifestyle and shedding all those expenses that didn't bring us joy. We set goals commensurate with what was really required to make us happy. You can too.
Okay, so we have this very difficult term right in the tip here, and while we were doing the reading there, I'll be honest, listeners, I checked the definitions because this is a tough term. And it's actually a word that a lot of native speakers use incorrectly. So when I see this word, of course, what is the word that's tough, Manya? You want to say it for us?
I can't because it is tough.
Zach, you want to try?
Commensurate.
No.
It's a tough one. So I've heard people say commensurate, but that is a different word.
That's
That
what I didn't want
that
to
one
say.
means like when you're sad, you get together with other people to feel sad together.
I thought
think.
that was commiserate.
Oh, that is commiserate. Nonetheless, let's back this truck up. Beep,
Okay.
beep, beep. That's an expression from when I was in high school. This is commensurate. Commensurate.
Okay.
Yeah,
Shorter
and
A.
commensurate, honestly, the easiest way to think about this is to change it for the word appropriate. Right? That's how I tend to think about it. That's how I can keep track of it in my head. So the idea here is you want to have clear and appropriate financial goals. I think in our definition for this article, we actually say something like,
Correct and suitable
there
amount.
you go, correct and suitable. And then they'll say compared to something else.
There's a
right?
comparison going on.
Okay, so the idea is not everyone should have the same goals. You need to have appropriate goals.
For your
you might
stage
almost
in
say
life.
achievable goals for you, but really more appropriate for this stage in your life, because those goals might change as your life changes, right?
Of course.
Before I had children, I was thinking I am going to buy a giant sailboat and a motorcycle. And now those are not my plans because they are not commensurate with my new life as a father. Nonetheless, we get into this right away, and the discussion here is mostly about clear goals. What does it say in the first paragraph, Zach?
It says that you won't know where you're financially going and how well you're doing without clear goals.
There you go. So we know that goals are important for career and, through education, right? Things like that. Also throughout other parts of life, and finance is no exception. So you need clear financial goals. They then go on to tell us about a survey by, it looks like a person, Charles Schwab, but it's actually the name of a financial services company, right? What did this company find out, Manya?
They found out that only 1 in 4 people have sound financial goals and a plan to back it up.
Oh, that's the key part right there. So my goal to have a boat and a really great motorcycle didn't have a plan to back it up. And that's why I don't have a boat today. I have children instead. Right there.
So they're talking about clear, concise actions that you might take
That's right.
to fulfill your plan.
So you kind of want to know what you want, but you also want to sort of figure out, like, for example, how much money you have to save each month and how long it will take to reach that goal. Because if you don't know that, it's really hard to know if the goal is appropriate, right?
Well, my question is, because I am definitely not 1 in 4 of those people.
You're
not the one.
You are not
I'm
the
not the
person with the
one.
plan.
Yeah, I'm the person with goals but no clear plan. And so my question is, how do you know how much is reachable? Like, what's realistic? How do you calculate that?
That is a wonderful question you are asking there. And that I know from personal experience that is a question that Zach here on the panel struggled with for several years. Mm-hmm. That's right. And basically the answer is there are all kinds of free online calculators that help you calculate different things.
I
And
was
the
not
idea
expecting
is,
that answer. But
yeah, if you find out, how much you're going to need for something using the calculators, you can find out how much you have to save. And if you don't think there's any way to do it, it's probably not a commensurate goal.
Well said. Well, my short answer was going to be do the math.
Yeah, there you go. But, if you're not good at math, there are these free online calculators that will
And
help.
templates and budgets and things like that where it will help you kind of work towards finding that right number.
The key is, though, it's not easy.
No.
Like it actually, it's not difficult work in that you can't understand it. Like when you're reading about it and stuff.
Wouldn't you say a lot of it is just through experience? As you try it, you do it, you kind of figure it out as you go, and then it becomes easier as you do the math and...
Yeah. So, nonetheless, you want to figure out this plan, and that's what the writer says. He and his wife have been doing this. They've been going through this process, and so of developing a plan. And so now they are no longer, like you, Manya, of the 3 out of 4 who have no plan. They say they have a crystal clear financial goal now, tied exactly to how much their entrepreneurial ventures need to make relative to the lifestyle they want to live. That's a big sentence. So they have a clear goal, crystal clear, in fact, which is really just a phrase that means very clear. So they have this clear goal, and the goal is tied to. So it's based on this idea of what lifestyle they want to live, right? The quality of life they want to have, how much that will cost, and how much their ventures, here ventures means businesses, need to earn for them to live the way they want to live. That's the idea.
Seems to make sense. So their ventures are bringing in the income, their lifestyle are their expenses.
Yeah, so you know how much it's going to cost you to live the way you want to live, and that tells you how much you need to earn, and then you just need to find a way to earn that money. And if you can't make the 2 numbers match, it's not an appropriate goal. That's it, I guess. So basically what happened was the writer's wife and the writer set a financial goal, assuming they'd be trading down their lifestyle and shedding all those expenses that didn't bring them joy. So, Zach, what are you doing when you're trading something down?
You're kind of making a sacrifice in a way, or you're giving up maybe a more luxurious item or an expense or something that you really enjoyed. To trade down would be to, well, earlier you mentioned, am I buying the large coffee or the small coffee?
Oh, yeah.
Trading down would be, no coffee for me today.
Getting rid of your Lexus and buying a Toyota.
Well said.
Right? Not that there's anything wrong with a Toyota, just that it's a lifestyle downgrade, I guess you could say, trading down. Then they say they're shedding expenses. Manya, just briefly, what are they doing when they're shedding something?
That means they're getting rid of all the expenses that they don't really have to make. So maybe it's like if you're signed up for a gym class, but you figure out a way to work out at home and you don't need to pay for that membership anymore, then you get rid of it.
Okay. And so then they'd set their goals that really matched what they needed to make them happy, right? And you can too. So don't give up, Manya.
Okay.
Let's head into our 3rd reading.
Two, you believe it's not about net worth, but net worthiness. An increasing net worth, your assets, what you own, minus your liabilities, what you owe, is a good basic measure of how you're doing financially year to year. But I'm suggesting that freeing yourself from net worth goals and comparisons is a sign of financial maturity and perspective. I propose a different measure. Net worthiness. Do you live a life structured around adding value to something bigger than yourself? That's what drives my wife and me now.
Okay, so the title here, you believe it's not about net worth, but net worthiness. And that's basically what is discussed in this section, these 2 terms, net worth and net worthiness. Now, it's worth noting that net worthiness is kind of a term that the author has created here, the writer has created. Net worth is something that people usually think about a fair bit if they're focused on money. Basically, the idea, they describe how you calculate it here. You take your assets, which is the things you own, and then you minus your liabilities, what you owe. And basically, what that means is when you're thinking about your net worth, you're thinking about how much money you have.
In total.
Yeah, total money. But the writer here is saying that maybe we shouldn't think so much about how much we have. Instead, we should think about the value of the things that we're doing. So maybe it's not all about money, I guess, is the idea.
Right. Instead, it's kind of that mindset that you have something that you're working towards, and that's going to actually, in the end, add to your net worth.
I think this is a common feeling or sentiment for entrepreneurs, particularly because of a sentence right at the end where he asks this question: do you live a life structured around adding value to something bigger than yourself? And the reason I think that's connected to entrepreneurs is because entrepreneurs are basically building a structure, like an organization, a company. So they're building something. And sometimes it's hard to measure the money that is in the value of that. Like we use this word intangible, which means it's hard to count, hard to see, but it sort of includes things like potential and stuff like that.
So
right?
for an entrepreneur, for a time, money would not be the best sign of
way
measure.
to measure the potential and the success of the company. Like there are other things like which employees are working there and what the idea is and who the leadership is.
So all of that would maybe fall under the title of worthiness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but you can see how that would, be also true in things other than in an entrepreneur's company. Like, for example, you might focus on improving the quality of your home life, right? Your family life, spend more time with your children, things like that. So there's all kinds of different areas of your life where you could focus on this idea of worthiness. You might give up money, but instead be building value in other ways. I think that's basically the idea. Now, listeners, thank you so much for joining us today as we've gone through the first 2 of these 6 signs. Be sure to come back tomorrow to hear the other 4. Until then, I'm Simon.
I'm Manya.
I'm Zach.
Saying goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Bye.